My365 is getting results with people just like you with our free live broadcasts, our Facebook group, and our podcasts. We have already helped millions of people change their lives for the better, and we're committed to help millions more to create the life they want today. So whether you want to be slimmer, fitter, healthier, happier, more confident, financially free, more successful, more productive, then My365 Elite is for you. You see, your future is unwritten and you have the power to change. And as you start to see changes, the thirst for more grows and your desire to get more results grows with it. And that is why I would like to invite you to join My365 Elite. My365 Elite is all about providing you with a way to embark on a game-changing voyage of self-discovery and success. You'll do more, discover more, and achieve more. You'll optimize your life, and you will have access to my coaching knowledge and experience in a structured way, but with the freedom to fit it around your own circumstances. That is what our membership program is about. So head over to my365elite.me. That's mi365elite.me and secure your place. My365 podcasts with me, Pete Cohen. Hi, it's Pete Cohen here. You join me for a very, very special My365 podcast. As many of you know, I've been doing podcasts for a long time. With the My365, we're way up into the 120s of inspiring people all over the world. But my dad has always said this, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And my business partner, Ben Davis, contacted me a few weeks ago and he said, look, you have got to interview this guy. He's on this TV series on Channel 4, SAS, Who Dares Wins. And I said, Ben, it would be great if we could sort that out. And we have sorted it out. And we have the amazing Johnny or Jonathan Davis here with us this evening. Johnny, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
Oh, no, it's pleasure's all mine. I'm very, very good. Very good indeed. Thanks for having me on.
Well, look, we have people all over the world, and our kind of mission statement with what we're trying to do is just inspire people to be better than their best. And sometimes it's quite hard for people to tap into the potential that they have to do things that they couldn't normally do. So you actually yesterday won, along with one of your colleagues, Matt, the third series of Who Dares Wins, which I watched it yesterday and I was blown away. Tell us a little bit about the program, first of all, and then let's get stuck into finding a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so the program is originated from a book that was originally written by a series of ex-Special Forces operators who worked across the SAS and the SBS, which is the naval version of kind of the British Armed Forces. The notorious world-renowned selection process kind of takes place to become a member of the SAS after usually having previously served in kind of an army regiment, the Paras, Royal Marines, and is known to be what most would say the most hardcore physical and mental process that any human can go through. It's kind of known as the hardest job interview, if you will. And so over the course of those 6 months in a selection process, they will undergo a lot of physical fatigue tasks. This could be anything of, continuous running with weight, and then mental duress tasks could be having to make decisions whilst under interrogation, sleep deprivation, starvation, dehydration, and then be able to carry out all of these very kind of intense tasks under that pressure.
Yeah.
And obviously at the end of it, there's a very, very high rate of dropout across selection. And so what happened was a number of these individuals wrote a book, became very successful, and the TV company Channel 4 in the UK decided to make this into a television show, whereby they would go and from applicants screen physical fitness and mental fitness down to a select number of 25 individuals from all around the country, various different disciplines and backgrounds and ages, and basically put together a very condensed version of that selection process into a 2-week span. And basically, you are thrown in at the deep end from minute one. There's we'll obviously get onto, a series of things that you end up doing. And essentially what it is the only way out of that process is that either you go on to pass it or you voluntarily withdraw from it.
Yeah.
And that's basically, you're given a number, and that's all that you're known by for the time that you're on that selection course. And when you want to ring the bell and give up, you take your armband off with your number on and you say IVW, and you go and give it to the instructor, and then you're done.
So I think that it's something that so many people are all fascinated with as far as the SAS, especially men, right? You know, it's that whole thing when you want to be a soldier, you want to be the best, and they are the best of the best. I've actually been quite fortunate to train when I did my personal training qualification and my fitness instruction. I did it with a whole lot of people from the SAS, and they were absolutely mental, and I became fascinated by their psychology, how they had the mental strength to do things which often people wouldn't do. Now, when I read a little bit about you, you're 24, right?
Yeah, 24.
24 from Brighton. And I read in something that they wrote in the local paper today that you watched the first series or the second series, and you basically said, I can do that, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of been a non-running joke. My dad and me always, when I grew up as a child, I was always fascinated with the armed forces. I think my parents always joke when I was a really young kid, on my Christmas list was just like a grenade for some reason. I was just obsessed with the army, loved it. And I then went to a military kind of college. So the college that I went to throughout the First and Second World War was renowned for supplying officers to the British Army, have a very high number of individuals that go on to Sandhurst, and obviously they make a career in it. And that was something that I was definitely interested in doing. Obviously, throughout my teenage years, me and my dad would then watch TV shows that were all about the SAS. They used to have the old ones with Eddie Stone, and read all of the books. Could be from Annie McNabb to just kind of general SAS and Special Forces books. And so we started watching the first season of SAS Who Dares Wins, which was based in the Brecon Beacons, which obviously is notorious one of the areas that real selection does happen. The fan dance of the Penny Fan is one of the most kind of iconic Brecon Beacons marches that they have to go on do for selection. And we would just watch the series season after season, and then it got to season 2, and they were in, I think, the Ecuadorian jungle. Yeah. And I was watching it, and I was just thinking, you know what? I think I could do that. I could do that. And then I used to say it whenever it was on every week. I'd be like, I reckon I could do that. I could do that too. And then it basically got to the end of the show, and a few weeks after that season had finished, I got a text message from my dad saying, they're doing applications. It's time to put your money where your mouth is. You think you can do it? Why don't you apply? And I thought, you know what? I think I will. And the rest is history.
Yeah, and there's so many things going through my head that I want to ask, because I'm always interested in when someone's good at something, I want to understand, what's their process? What is making it happen? So, I mean, let's just start with this. So, if for those of you that haven't watched it, go and watch it, because it's really, really interesting. Lots of people love the whole idea of what these people actually do with SAS training, but this program has really given people the opportunity to get an understanding of what people go through. And what I saw yesterday, some of those things, just tell us some of the obstacles or some of the challenges that you were given.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to remember as well, everybody's coming from a very different background. So, there are some tasks that may favor others, and you just got to be an all-round individual. And so, just to name off a few, within a couple of your jumping out of helicopters that are, straight over kind of rivers and such, you're having to fight, not in a boxing sense. This is simply just headshots with another individual until one of you falls down. You're going on 10-mile runs every single day or so with, various weight in 35 to 40 degree heat. We were running up and down mountains, carrying people up and down mountains. We fast rope descended off of a 250-foot dam. We basically had to fall backwards blindfolded off of a high up kind of platform into water. We had to do 20 hours of non-stop interrogation where there was sleep deprivation. The whole way through, they're starving you, dehydration. There's then a series of different, what they refer to as sickeners, which are basically physical endurance exercises that don't stop until a certain number of individuals quit. And the whole way through this, you're being psychologically profiled. They're taking you in the middle of the night during your sleep deprivation with a hood on to then be interrogated, questioned, and barraged.
They're basically trying to break you,
Yeah.
And the thing that interests me most about any human being isn't what you've achieved. For me, it's like, what did you have to overcome in order to achieve something? What did you have to find in yourself to do something which maybe you didn't think you could do? And I saw this in my wife, right where I'm literally 2 feet from here. 6 years ago, my wife had a massive seizure, rushed to hospital, given 18 months to live. 6 years cancer-free, which is amazing. But it's what she found in herself to deal with the situation, and what I found in myself to help her deal with the situation, to find a solution outside of the box from what everyone else was doing. And but we had to find a situation like that for us to tap into something that was already there. And my wish, I suppose, is more people would tap into that inner strength that they have every day to do great things to make the world a better place. So you didn't crack, or you didn't look like you cracked. I suppose they couldn't figure you out, and that's something that you see, that the people in charge, all the SAS people, you could see quite clearly they just couldn't figure you out, and I really loved that, and I want to understand why that is. But let's go. Let my excitement just calm down a little bit. Let's go back a step. And I asked you this when we spoke very briefly last week on the phone. Where did you feel that you learnt this ability to deal with things that are difficult? Where did that come from? Do you think you were born with it, or do you think that's something you learn, or a bit of both?
I think as I've got older and you meet other people and you understand how they react to certain situations and stimulus and such like that, I do believe that there is an element of it that is genetics. I do believe, to what percentage, I think it varies individually, but I do think there's always a grounding. Now, that being said, there's definitely an argument that says that it is something that you can train, that you can over time, usually due to exposure to experiences, is where you end up kind of governing that. I think that for me, ever since I was very young, at first I would always panic and worry about things all the time. Like, when you're a kid and you have exams and you have school exams and all of this such. And I just remember, no matter what was going on in my life, whether, I was acing my exams, I was in like a good relationship, had great friendships, something like that, I'd always find something that would like make me not necessarily down, but not as happy as I should be about how good things are. And I'll always remember that my dad basically was kind of really, really kind of key in it, where he said, you shouldn't worry about the things that you can't control, worry yourself for the things that you can. And so he would always say there's kind of two ways that you can have an outlook on life. You can either have an outlook on life of life is a series of events that happen before, everybody eventually dies. And you can either see those events as obstacles and things that are kind of there to trip you up and are going to make life harder, or you can actually kind of learn kind of put together a mental process that actually sees these obstacles and challenges as a way to better yourself, and a way to make yourself better. And where can you see these kind of what most people see as maybe quite hard or negative experiences, and look at them in a way that says, actually, this is an opportunity for me to grow as a person. This is an opportunity for me to get better at whatever it is that's relating to. And I then found very quickly that my mentality towards things that I was worrying about, exams, at the time we were playing in bands as well, so writing music and everything like that, they all started to kind of dissipate. I then, I think one of the most important things, and it's very kind of swept under the rug, is actually how you interact with other human beings. You learn so much about who you are by seeing other people as well, how they receive your kind of mannerisms around them, the way that you kind of reflect onto the world definitely has a kind of repercussions on yourself and your character. And I think that, just the more experiences that you can have, it kind of molds you better. And I know I touch on it in the show, and it's quite funny because it was kind of received, I think, quite in a negative connotation. I think that's mainly because of the editing. But, when I was going through, I didn't go to university. I got offered to go to do kind of business, business management, and I decided not to. At the time I was playing in bands and went off playing shows, and luckily I was kind of at that stage in my life where most people find that quite scary, the idea that you want to throw away going and doing the usual stuff that everybody else is doing, and you just kind of throw caution to the wind and go for it and try and do stuff in music. And for me, I did jobs in that time that a lot of people, probably wouldn't be able to do. I was working really, really long hours doing kind of grunt work jobs, like most people do. But then there was one that was working for an insurance company. And, I was working for an insurance company at the time where it was kind of, it was all medical based. So it would be, people that went on holiday and wanted holiday insurance for a specific medical condition that, they've had for years. And you would kind of then issue a certificate that then, you will be covered for this. But every so often you would have people that would call that would say, we're away in Thailand or something and my partner's passed away. And unfortunately, this is what the report from the doctors here says the reason why. And you would go through it and you would see that, say, for example, it could be a heart problem. And then you actually see on their policy with their doctor's notes that they had a problem with their heart maybe a year ago and they had never disclosed it to the insurance company. So in that moment, you're then the individual that has to essentially change someone's life. You're, for the sake of your job, you're the one that has said, I'm really, really sorry, but unfortunately, we can't cover you. And the reason that we can't cover you are actually outside of my control. They're in the terms and conditions of the policy. And, it's a very, very difficult conversation to have with somebody. And I learned very early on in that job that if you allowed that situation to come back with you and see yourself as accountable for that situation, that could have a very adverse effect on you. And I think for me in my life, that was a real kind of changing point of being able to not emotionally detach. I think that the way that it came across in the show was that I didn't care, and that's definitely not the case. A lot of these conversations are having people very delicate, and you do feel something for them in that sense. You can empathize with their situation, but you understand that if you were to take that back, that would seriously affect your life.
Yes.
And I then developed a strategy that was every day that I would turn up for that job, I would leave myself at the door. So when I walked in, once I was inside those doors, there was no Jonathan Davis who, has a girlfriend and has a family and has friends and all that kind of stuff. You're just there to clock in, clock out, get paid, do the job, go home. And when you walk out that door, Jonathan Davis comes back on again. It's a bit like a hat.
Well, the way I look at that is that you have learned extremely well how to deal with certain situations because, no human being is perfect. And some people can't do that. That's what Andy McNam would call you a good psychopath. People think of a psychopath as a bad thing, but a good psychopath kind of recognizes that they can do good thing with the brain that they have. And you have learned to use your psychology in a way that everyone can, but it isn't always easy, is it? Because we can revert to a default setting, which is one of that we feel emotionally. I'll give you an example. I had a coach for 16 years, and he actually saved my wife's life. Just like your dad has given you great advice, you've taken that advice and you've used it. My dad has always said, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So I know a lot of people. When my wife had this seizure, and it's not what you know, it's who you know. I phoned up my coach, and my coach said, find people that are still alive with the same brain tumor and find out what they did. And then he said, what is she going to do when she gets better? And I said, she's only been given 18 months to live. And he went, so what? People defy the odds all the time. And the reason I tell you this is he used to train special forces in American soldiers in jungle warfare. And he said the fascinating thing about the Americans is that the pygmies who were training them in how to survive in the jungle would say, right, go off and hide for 3 days. And we'll come and find you. And they always found them because they would think. And the Vietnamese and those little pygmies who were training them say, you can see when people are thinking. And if people blend in with the environment, they become the environment, and you can't see them because they are. And that's why the Americans never won the Vietnam War, because the Vietnamese became the jungle. You just couldn't, you couldn't find them. And this is what you've kind of done. You've adapted to the situation. And I suppose the question I want to ask you now is, at what point did you go into this knowing that you were going to win?
Yeah. So they don't show. Basically, when you get accepted to the show, you spend like 3 or 4 hours talking similar to this to the camera. So when there's those interview bits that are cut out, where we're kind of talking to the camera about a certain situation that's not on set, they were all pre-recorded beforehand.
Yeah.
And so, they ask you in that situation, they say, do you think you got what it takes? And I said, I will win this show. And the guy kind of stopped, and he was like kind of, smiling a little bit. And he goes, we've had a lot of guys come through. We've had a lot of the guys that I asked this question to, and all of them say, yeah, I'm going to win it. That's fine. What makes you think that, what you're saying is different? And I just said that I think, and I think they even mentioned it in the show, the word, I think I'm what you would refer to as an anomaly, in the, not everybody likes them, not everybody understands them, but I can categorically tell you that I think I will succeed in this show. And I think that's for many reasons. I think I always knew that physically, there was nothing that they could get me to do that would break me. Mentally, I believed that my ability to kind of hand over control to this other side of me to kind of deal with whatever the psychological tasks they would give didn't have a boundary that would be pushed to a break. And so I've always been a massive believer, and this was something that my mum always said to me, of kind of visualization to actuality. And the more that you visualize something in your head, the more millions of times that you see that event happening, you can influence bringing that into the world. And so she would always say to me, I was obsessed with football. She'd be like, David Beckham, how many times do you think that David Beckham kicks a ball for a free kick? And I was like, millions of times. And she was like, okay, now how many times do you reckon that David Beckham sits there or lays in bed at night and imagines kicking that free kick in a perfect motion, in like the most stressful environment, like taking that penalty, taking that free kick? He does it millions upon millions of times. And what that actually then does is, the more times you visualize that, the more that you're actually able to, I believe, physically, through kind of muscle memory, through all of those things that we never really tap into as human beings, you are not able to necessarily confirm 100% that it's going to happen, but you are improving the odds and likelihood of that happening. And for me, that was always the case with this show. I never, ever, ever had any moment where I thought I would quit. And I always saw that there was only one way that I was ever not going to win this show, and that's if they tore my arm off trying to take the armband off of me to quit.
It's so great to hear people like yourself talking about this, especially the fact that you're young and you've obviously got a very wise head on your shoulders. And what I suppose there must have been certain situations where you didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but it almost didn't matter because you just told yourself, I can deal with this. And this is something that we look to help people with, which is their identity. It's like having an identity of who you aspire to be and knowing that that's like me and that's who you are and that's who you become. And that's quite clearly in your mind what you do. You identify with this person who is a winner and cannot be beaten by anything. And maybe some of that is genetic. I think maybe some of it is, but the reality is that's only going to take you so far because you need to train, and you have trained your mind. And I know you train your body. You're massively into CrossFit, aren't you? And you're a trainer.
Yeah, so I think that I am a CrossFit trainer as well. I think that if you're looking at a physicality element, the thing that was so brilliant about CrossFit in this show is, as you say, we had no idea what was going to be thrown at us. You have no idea what physically you're going to be asked to do. And so there were a lot of fit individuals on the show. There were guys that, equally as fit, more fit than I was. And I think that some of them, perhaps their training and fitness was very specific to a certain area. So, that could have been bodybuilding, could have been running, could have been, marathons, could have been boxing, whatever it is. I've always kind of embraced that side of the kind of jack of all trades, master of none approach of the actually what CrossFit, the whole point of it is that you train in a manner of everything. So that if somebody picked 50 random things out of a hat with 100 people there, statistically, there's a good chance that I'm going to come out nearer to the top on all of those than anybody else. Yeah. And I think that where that pairs in is with the kind of the mental training. Everybody always says to me like, even my girlfriend, she says, how do you how do you mentally train yourself? How does that work? It's not like lifting weights. It's not like, there's a set number of repetitions. And I think it depends on what it is that you require that mental training to help you with. If it's to get by with everyday life, or to deal with something such as, it could be depression, could be anxiety, there's many different fields that you can require that mental strength for, and they have different applications depending on what it is. I think that for me, it was that I've always had this ideal of that you need to be comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yes.
And so especially in this regard of going and doing selection, the SAS, this is the stuff that is meant to be at the boundaries of what physically you want to do. And that's where, as soon as you hit that point, that's where mentally you start to have all these things come in your head of like, this hurts, like, I should stop, or I think I'm at, my boundary, I'm at my threshold. And so they have this idea of that's where you're actually training. So whenever I go into the gym, I will never go and do things that other people would want to do. So they have this idea of like do things today that others won't, so you can do tomorrow what they can't. It's like there's this athlete called Matt Fraser that says that a lot. And it's this idea of that I could walk into a gym and walk over to the dumbbells and do some bicep curls or some tricep curls, maybe go and do a few sets of 100 meters running and do some squats or some pull-ups. And, sometimes you do that, but what if actually instead when you come in, you go and do stuff that nobody wants to do? Nobody wants to do 100 pull-ups for time and then run 5 miles with a weight vest on, or, do a 10K row as fast as they can. Like nobody wants to do those things, and they don't want to do them because they feel really shitty.
Yeah.
But I see it as that when you get to that point, in those movements, in those workouts, where it gets horrible, where you think you're not even halfway through and it feels like rubbish, and there's no one training with you, you're in there on your own. So I train in this kind of, obviously CrossFit's typically industrial estate kind of areas. They're referred to as kind of boxes. They're not glossy Globo gyms.
Yeah.
And ours is this kind of cold industrial estate warehouse. And where I coach, I'll turn up before a session or I'll stay afterwards when there's nobody else around, and I won't put any music on. I won't do anything like that that's going to make it easier, and I will just zone out and basically go to what you refer to as the pain cave. So the pain cave is not the beginning of the workout. It's always at a certain area of it. Yeah. And you basically got to learn how to endure staying in that for as long as possible. And you're only training when you're in that part. So then when I got to the show, and people, by day 6, day 7, you haven't eaten, you haven't slept, and you're being asked to go and run up a mountain with 10, 20 kilos on your back, it's just another day. It's just like any other day of training.
I saw that, and I saw you always were ahead, and all the things that I saw, you went ahead of everybody else. How aware were you that you were probably psyching the people out that you were with?
I love it, because I always thought, I'm not a huge person. I'm not like a bodybuilder.
Like Matt. Matt was the guy.
Matt's a very, very, very kind of well chiseled. I mean, he's in great shape. Not just bodybuilding. He's incorporated a lot of kind of what you call engine building. So he's done a lot of the cardio work, which a lot of bodybuilders don't. A lot of them you refer to as what's kind of called disco muscles.
Yeah,
they look great, but actually their kind of real world application is pretty limited. Not to say that there's not a lot of determination, focus, and hard work that goes into it, which obviously is applaudable. But to go and do the show, it's not the ideal kind of thing. If then you're running a lot, and so I always looked at these situations as I've never been a big kind of guy, but my body weight to strength ratio is very, very different to most people. So, I weigh 70 kilos, but I'll be deadlifting 180, 190. Olympic lifts of like snatching and such, I'll be doing well over body weight. And my application then for things such as running or pull-ups or carrying another individual of roughly the same weight, it is on average to the normal person extremely good. And so ever since, even when I was in college, I used to do athletics. So I used to actually run the 400 meters. And what was so great about that is that's the most, I feel, the most pain cave of a distance to have to run.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the 100's a sprint, 200's a sprint, 800, there's, you keep a certain pacing, but the 400's it's a different ball game. It's you're going 75, 80% speed the whole way through. And that final 100 meters, your legs might as well have 100 kilogram weights done to them because the lactic acid buildup is so disgustingly high. Every single time I would race it, I would throw up. Every single time, I'd hate it. And, our running school, we were very, very good. And we were, in the county, we were running for county level. And I even remember it before every single race, I would turn up and I'd be racing against these people that were way taller than me, way taller, way bigger. But I would beat them every single time. And I started to almost enjoy that doubting of that when you turn up day one and people look at them and kind of go, okay, like I'm a big guy. And I think that's where a lot of these kind of physical exercise tasks, people get it wrong. A lot of people look at the selection process and go, you must have to be a really physically fit and do that. That's true. And they don't see the mental fitness side that's required. That's what catches a lot of people out. But as a bystander, your average individual looks at that lineup of guys and goes, he's huge, he's very, very muscly, he's big, this guy's not really a lot to him. And so that's why when you're going on these massive runs and, you're going up and down these mountains and doing these tests and you're out in front, and in some cases, depending on the editing, on the last day, I was lapping people on those final trials. They
didn't show that.
They didn't show that. But, it kind of, the more and more that happens, it's like someone just throwing fuel on the fire.
It's like unassuming, isn't it? That you must have started off and they must have looked at you and maybe not thought that much of you, but and then to the point where they then start focusing on you. And I would imagine they didn't show this, but I would imagine a lot of those guys were moaning and complaining, but you didn't. You wouldn't allow yourself to go down to a place. I worked with a guy who ran 100 marathons in 100 days. And then he did 50 ultra marathons in 50 days. And, people would say to him like, oh, it must have been really hard, really difficult. And he's like, why would you ask me that question? You do what you have to do. And that's what life gives us the opportunity, right? It gives us the opportunity to test ourselves. And I must just ask you, actually, when you ran 400 meters, did you ever run against, because I worked with Sally Gunn on 400 meter hurdle. I worked with Ewan Thomas, Mark Richardson, all 400 meter runners. Did you ever race against Finley Gunnell, who's because they live in Stenning, which is you live in Shoreham, right?
Yes, I think he's an 800 college.
I think he's an 800 meter runner.
I would assume not.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's got nothing to do with anything. It is a small world. So what I'd love to find out from you now is what is next. That there's this thing like the hero's journey, right? Where we watch films because we see a hero, we see someone going on a quest, we see them doing something which maybe they didn't think they could do. You were anonymity to that because you knew you could do it, but now you've done this thing and you've come back. What is next for you? What is it that you want to do with what you've done? Yeah,
so before kind of the show had started, I've been thinking about, and maybe in an arrogant kind of sense, like, so when you win it, you got to do something with it. You can't let these opportunities just kind of slide through your fingers.
Yeah.
And so I put my head together and I was, thinking about stuff. And eventually I would love to lead to a point where I'm coaching a lot more. Obviously I have a day job still. So I'm still, I get like a business development manager. And I now work for a digital design agency. But, in the evenings, that's when I do coaching. That's when I train. And my end goal would be great to own a CrossFit box. Kind of own a gym and obviously be able to, make that my full-time job. But alongside that from the show is that what we're kind of working towards is this ethos that we set up called Pay the Man. And that's a saying that's used a lot in the Navy SEALs. So CrossFit originally derived from a fitness regime called SEALFIT, which was used by, the Navy SEALs and the police and the fire departments and such in the US and various different special forces operations around the world to help them get into shape and stay in that all-round fitness. And so Pay the Man is basically this ethos of the, nobody wants to have to work out every day. Some people love it. I'm one of them. But a lot of people, you have to allocate a point of time in your day to do it. And basically, when you do that hour of exercise, don't go and do something that's easy. Don't go and do something that's just take the easy route, take the simple road, and then clock in, clock out.
Yeah.
choose something that's going to push you more than you did something yesterday. So each day you're kind of carving yourself kind of physically and mentally a little bit more, putting yourself out of your comfort zone. Kind of comes, I guess, from that saying of do something every day that scares you, kind of thing like that. And so Pay the Man is this idea that every single day the rent is due, okay? And the rent's due to essentially like hard work and the devil. It sucks. Nobody likes him. It's really, really crap, but it's got to be done. And so what we're doing is we basically have set up the website. So it's in the process of being kind of finished at the moment, which is paytheman.co.uk. And so first of all, we will be bringing out like programming of like, that's not going to be your average, do some press ups, do some sit ups, go for a run kind of situation. We're going to do one of how I prepared for the show, of, for people that want to apply for the new season, which I know that they've put out the applications for already. So if you want to know what I did, this is how I prepared, and I'd suggest you do something along the same lines.
Yes.
So there'll be that. There'll also then be something that's a little bit more of like, what am I doing today? What am I doing to pay the man? Can you do it too? This is what I'm doing. If you're not quite at that level yet, here's some scaled versions that are appropriate for beginners and intermediates. But also what we then wanted to do was kind of create a bit of a different experience of kind of an information center. And so by that, typically a lot of these fitness platforms, programs and such, they silo themselves. So, you may be really interested to, boxing, for example. And you may have people that do boxing podcasts and such, but they kind of keyhole it to one kind of area. And I guess it's kind of what we wanted to do is create a platform that takes that pay the man ethos, that kind of doing the work that nobody else wanted to do, and you doing it, and how did it pay off? And we've managed to set up a series of kind of conversations and chats with people across various different disciplines and sports. From like, we've got boxing champions, we've got individuals that play for England football and such like that, where we're going to be sitting down and talking to them. So, for them, what does pay the man mean? What does it mean where they got to in their career that they did differently that all the other individuals trying to do didn't do? And so we've also got them from different kind of eras of their sport. So we've got champions from boxing that were kind of in the era of when it wasn't like it is now, where people stay in shape all year round, where nutrition's this massive thing that we've started to tap into in the modern age of, how can you tweak your diet in order to help your performance, and the understanding of injuries such as, head concussions and such. What was the training like back then, and how has it now changed in the modern era, and what would somebody now need to be doing of paying the man differently to everybody else in order to become that next big thing? Yeah. And so we wanted to kind of, it's more out of a passion sense. I'm not focused on an idea of that I want to use this as a platform to become some personality or some whatever. I would much rather these are things that I'm passionate about. So what is it about it that that was going to be my next question. So I'm so glad that you said that. I'm really curious as to what is it that Johnny is passionate about? What does he stand? What are you passionate about? For me, I understood a while ago that the capacity and what the human body and mind is capable of is vastly past what people use it for. Yeah. Nowadays, obviously, in the modern world, everybody goes to a 9-to-5 job, sits at a desk, does that, goes home, sees their loved ones, maybe watch some TV, goes to bed. If you actually look at the populations of the world as kind of percentages, especially in kind of Western culture, it's the 5% that are actually then going out and doing other things that are trying to test themselves as a human, to kind of unlock things about themselves that they didn't know or didn't understand. And so for me, I've always wanted to push the boundaries and understand, just how far can I push my body, obviously in a safe manner, and my mind to really discover. And in that, as you say, I think you did at the beginning, you discover a lot about who you are as a person. There's 7 billion people on this earth, and everybody is unique in their own way. It's a big enough lottery game to even be birthed on the planet. Well,
one of the first podcasts I did was a guy called Joe DeSana. Joe DeSana started Spartan Races. The guy is unbelievable, a bit like you, but he's a lot older than you. And he always talks about the need for delayed gratification. How human beings need to say, I can have that, but I won't have it now, and to build your willpower. But he also talks about when people do the Spartan race or the death race. By the way, if you ever want to do the death race, I'm sure I can organize that for you, just because this is a race that you'd win it. They have a few hundred people do it, and only like 4 people finish it. He would absolutely. You would really get on well with him. But one of the things that he said is that when people finish things that they didn't think that they could do, they have this kind of awakening, like almost like a spiritual kind of
euphoric moment.
Euphoric, yeah. That's the word. Some people would say spiritual, some would say euphoric, like, look what I can do. And it's like, that might not be for everyone, but personally, I can really relate to that. And what you've said to me today has made me realize, hey, you know what? I can make a couple of little tweaks there, and I'm going to take what you've shared with me, and I'm going to do something with it. And I know that's what I'm sure a lot of people will do who will listen to this. They will be inspired by what you say. How can people follow you? I know now you've got a massive following on Instagram, and I'm sure that's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. How can people follow you on Instagram?
So Instagram, it's at, and then it's Johnny Davis, just JONNYDAVIS. And yeah, I'm very active on Instagram, so especially moving forward, going to be posting a lot about, you know, how I'm working out, what I'm doing, and such like that. I mean, I think just one kind of point that I think is really kind of a testament to the show of what you touched on is that what was so brilliant about the show was that they knew when someone that was quitting was going to hand in their armband. They'd go up to them and say, I'm done, I'm holding it in. And every single time they would refuse it the first time. They'd say, no, you're not, put it back on, off you go. And the reason they did that was then the person may quit the next day, a couple of hours later. But what they wanted to instill in them is that that was what you thought your boundary was. And so you went to go and give it in. And then you actually continued a bit further, and then you hit a new boundary. So actually where you thought you were and where you are 2 different levels, which I think, as you were saying, it's kind of you learn this ability of that actually, yeah, I can go a little bit harder. I can turn things up a little bit more, and I can go a little bit further. And that was what I thought was actually brilliant and a real testament to the show, is that for so many of the guys that overcame these massive obstacles, and all of us, you know, I consider them brothers. And in the 2 weeks, I got to know them better than half the people I know for the last 15 years. And, you know, seeing them grow as individuals and overcome fears and fight battles mentally and prove things to themselves and to loved ones and friends and everything like that. My other, I guess you'd say, drive for doing it and why I do coaching is when you see that happen with another human being, and those moments that you remember happening where you discovered something else about yourself, that, you know, you had that euphoric moment and you see it happen in somebody else, you know, that's kind of pretty darn.
And what's so great is that the guys that are in charge, they didn't see that side of you. You know, you kept that, you know, to yourself, and I think that's great. Yeah. I mean, maybe it was edited that way, but you could see that they were just trying to figure out, is this some sort of cold bastard, if you will, for want of a better word? Is this all just? But really, that wasn't you. You just kept that, and you kept it down where it, you know, because there was no need to show that, right? You did what you had to do to win, you know. But I bet they realized that pretty soon afterwards. What a great person.
Well, I actually speak to a lot of them. So one of the instructors, I actually train with him sometimes now. So, you know, he'll come to the gym with me and I'll set out some of the workouts that we're going to do for that day, and I'll make them really shitty on purpose. And, you know, he loves payback.
Yeah. But, you know, I'm writing a book at the moment. It's called Inspirators, and it's all about the next generation of leaders. And the whole concept is an inspirator is someone who wants to follow themselves. And in my eyes, you are a true inspirator. You inspire yourself. You know, no one is perfect, but people should follow you. If people want to be inspired about doing things they didn't think they could do, and I believe everyone needs coaching. Coaching saved my life. Coaching saved my wife's life. It was my coach that said, you know, find people that are still alive. And I'm very indebted to you for your time, especially after you just won, well, officially yesterday, because obviously it was a day ago. Well, actually, it was filmed back in October. Yeah. But yeah, it's been a crazy ride. Yeah, listen, I bet it has. I want to actually just film for a little second here, but just tell us again where people can find out about you. So Instagram, just give us that Instagram again. We'll put it in the show notes.
It's Johnny Davis on Instagram.
Yep. How else can people? So that website you said would be ready fairly soon?
Yeah, it'd be www. Yeah, and then it's up at the moment, but we're doing work on it, so bits are coming out daily. Really, it's www. and then paytheman.co.uk.
I love it, and I really do think people should pay the man every day. You should always pay a little bit of rent. You should give more than you get, and by giving more, you seem to get more anyway. So this has been absolutely fascinating. I really, really appreciate your time. Make sure you go and check Johnny out. Go and follow him. Today's show has been brought to you by My365 Elite. Go and check out my365.me/elite and find out how coaching can seriously be an integral part of your life. The role of a coach is to take you from where you are to where you want to be. Some people don't know where they want to be, but that's what a good coach can do. And here is an exceptional coach that we've been talking to today. So, Johnny, thank you so much. I wish you well.
Thank you.
Take good care, and we will see you soon. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and if you want more free inspiration to optimize your life so you can achieve your goals in all the different areas of your life, then visit my365.me. That's mi365.me and sign up to 365 days of free coaching with me, Pete Cohen. Thanks for listening and have an awesome day.